Hey folks, got a TW200 carburetor issue I wanted to try and fix. I have two TW200s. I've got a 95 and a 94. Uh, what happened was I went to start my 95 and turned the fuel on, and the gas started flowing out of the float bowl, out of the drain tube here, which is not good. So I did my little tappy tap thing on the float bowl, you know, burp, burp, burp. They should be switched to unstick the float, which worked, but I had a no start issue. So thought, well, now I got to pull this carburetor out, and pull the carburetor out. This one here is off the 95. This is off the 94. I had a heck of a time getting this carburetor out. I couldn't figure out why. I did look at some install and removal carburetor videos, and it for the TW200 it shouldn't be that hard. This one was, and come to find out, well, let me back up a little bit. I thought, well, if I'm going to rebuild this, because I knew I had issues with this, if I'm going to rebuild this, I might as well rebuild them both, right? So started on that, got the rebuild kits, got two of them, and started doing a little digging, a little examining, and come to find out, the one here is, on my right here, is not a TW200 carburetor. You can see how different the caps are. Yep, a lot different. Plus, this one here is 9 millimeters longer than the stock one. So that would explain why it was so hard to get out. And also, on this end, on the intake boot side, you can see that there's about a 3 millimeter difference between this intake side and this one. It's pretty substantial. So I'm like, well, what do I do? I don't know. So I'm going to try and figure out what to do here. But in the meantime, I could not find a complete teardown of just the TW200 carburetor. This is a TK Takia, I think it's how you pronounce it, 28 millimeter, which deals with this inside diameter here, 28 millimeters. They're both 28 millimeters, so I know that's good. But anyways, I'm going to do a complete teardown and rebuild of the stock carb, hopefully, and we'll discuss what happened with this one too, why it failed. So let's get moving on with that. All right. Yep. Okay, first I want to discuss what tools I'll be needing for this job. I'm going to need a 7 millimeter wrench here, an 8 millimeter wrench, a 12 millimeter wrench, a skinny flathead screwdriver. I had to grind this one down to fit. A JIS screwdriver, Japanese Industrial Standard JIS, because these are Japanese carbs. They use Japanese screws, so JIS is a must. Possibly a punch. I'll explain that, why I have this punch here. Pair of pliers. Need a pair of pliers. Yep, pair of pliers. Some copper wire. A magnetizer can come in handy too, because I'll show you why. Anyways, let's get moving on with this teardown, shall we? Let's get on it. Let's get on it. First, I want to discuss what happened with this Chinese carburetor. I think it's Chinese. I assume it is. It's got to be. Who else could it be? I'll show you a picture. I had a bunch of black gritty stuff in the float bowl, which clogged up all my jets. But anyways, what happened was, this is the emulsion tube here with the main jet 114. I have replaced this O-ring here, but this O-ring failed. Either it was the improper type of O-ring. This is a, what do they call it? Vitron, by Vitron, that I put on here, but that O-ring had completely disintegrated, and I'll show you a picture of that, and it just left all kinds of nasty grit inside of the carburetor, clogging everything up, which was not good at all. So anyways, let's begin the teardown, shall we? I'm going to put this aside. Bye-bye, carburetor. Okay. Okay, first thing we got to do is remove the float bowl, the float pin, I'm sorry, float pin and float. And here's our little pin right here, and I'll discuss, this is where your pliers can come in handy. Gently remove the pin. Set that aside. float and needle comes out. We'll examine those in a bit. And this is your float needle seat here, which should be removable, but somebody boogered this up before me. So got issues there. And I do want to discuss with this float pin here. This is the one that came out of here. This one here. I don't know if we can see that. I'll zoom in real close. Probably not. It's all boogered up and actually has a slight bend to it. And what I had to do, and I didn't want to break these arms, I had to punch it back and forth, use my pliers and pull, punch it back and forth. And finally got it out. But obviously these holes were a little boogered up, and it had some burrs on them and whatnot. So what I found was, because that float needle, this float pin is not an item that I think you can replace on the TW200 carburetor, so I had to come up with a solution for that. So what I got here is a number 43 drill bit. This pin here, as you can see, I have a micrometer, so it's precise. This pin here, this float pin, is 89 thousandths. So I checked my drill chart for drill bits, and a number 43 is exactly 89 thousandths. So what I found was you could just stick this drill bit in there, ream the hole out a little bit so that the float pin will fit nicely. And also, if you're missing your float pin or yours is boogered up like mine, you can simply cut this drill bit down and use it as a float pin. So there's that. Number 43 works like a charm. Set that aside. Okay, let's move on to this carburetor did not have this baffle on it. This is replaceable. This Chinese carb did. I'll take that off. You need your 8mm for the emulsion tube, so we'll take that out. This is already loosened up. Take the emulsion tube out. You can see here, oops, this O-ring here is a little cruddy. Can you see that? I don't know if we can see that very well. It's a little cruddy, so I'll have to be replacing that. Your 7mm comes in for the main jet. This is your main jet on top here. That's a 7mm. Take that out. Uh-oh. That'll need to be inspected and cleaned and possibly changed, but I'm going to keep that together as a unit. There we go. I do have some copper wire here, which I used to initially clean out the emulsion tube and the pilot jet. This wire here, I think it's a 10 gauge, possibly 8, I can't remember. But this wire here is 23 thousandths in diameter, which is just good enough to push through those holes. Okay, so that'll clean that out. One thing I did want to discuss real quick with the emulsion tube is the kit I got. You can see here, the kit I got had a new emulsion tube, but we can see the hole pattern there. This emulsion tube has 4 holes, that one has 2. 4 holes and 2, so I know something's iffy, not right there, so I'll have to use this one. I don't know how that'll impact fuel flow, but I know it will because there's half the holes, so that means less fuel as far as I can tell. Alrighty, let's move on. Next will be the pilot jet, which is right here. You need a flat, skinny screwdriver. Be careful with these. You can strip these out. If you strip them out, they're kind of screwed. Just gently take that out. I know carburetors are carburetors, but I like to have bike-specific teardowns if possible. Here is the pilot jet for the TW200. Not sure. I don't see a size associated with this. Might be one on top there. Looks like there is, but I can't read it. A 40 maybe? 40? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Also, my wires, back to my wires again. Found out what this pilot jet has. you want to clean it out with a wire. I know you aren't supposed to use wire, but this is copper wire, which is as soft or softer than brass, so it should not scratch. But anyways, this pilot jet, it has about a 25 thousandths hole drilled partially the way through. You can see that won't go through. And through the other side, and in between is an itty bitty hole. And also you can see these holes here. I could just clean out these holes here with my wire. But anyways, in order to clean that out, if it is clogged, you need something thinner. This is thin gauge wire, which will go all the way through. As if you can see that there. Can we see that? That'll go all the way through. This is 13 thousandths thick, so my guess that in between hole there is 15 to 18 thousandths. It's hard to measure, but I know it's less than 23 thousandths. So there's our pilot jet. Next is the air fuel mixture screw. Now, what you're supposed to do with these is start where you're at and just simply turn them in to see how many turns in it is. So we've got 1 and about 1 1/2, 1 3/4. So I'm going to turn that out. So I'll remember that 1 3/4. I think it's supposed to be like 2. So we'll turn this all the way out. It's got a spring on it and an O-ring on the top. You can see that here. Put you back together. This O-ring on the top. You can see there, and the spring. A lot of other carburetors have a washer on the bottom of the spring and an O-ring. This one's not that way. I did find with the Chinese carb with my new kit, this thread pitch is slightly different. I wonder if the diameters are different. So this will not fit my Chinese carb. It's the only thing it won't fit. That's 152 thousandths. This is 152 thousandths. So I don't know. It didn't fit. It wouldn't go. So don't know what to do about that. Don't know. So there's that. That's coming apart. Alrighty, next will be this this float needle seat. Now, this one, whoever had this carburetor part before, there's a washer underneath the screw. The screw retains this float seat, which is removable, but they boogered up this edge here, so at the moment I cannot get this out. Cannot. But I will demonstrate that on the Chinese carb, how that comes out. Let's pull this back over here. Just simply take the screw out. And this could be fairly tight, maybe. Don't know. This is where your magnetic screwdriver comes in handy. But you should be able to just pull it out by hand, maybe. And why you want to check this or replace it is on the TW200 carburetor. There's a screen on the end of this float seat. Can we see that there? See that screen? And that can get clogged, which can cause starting issues. So my new kit did come with a new float seat, but I haven't installed that yet. This one looks fine. The screen looks fine. So I think I'm just going to keep that as it is. I'll put that back in just so I don't lose crap all over the place. Put that back in. La-di-da. Another thing to check is you want to take off the choke, clean it out. This is the 12 millimeter. I already have it all loosened up. Pull this little boot up off of here and simply remove that. There should be an O-ring on the end of it right here. I replaced that already. And here's another thing with this Chinese carb. I'll pull the choke off of that. Something I just don't know what to do about. You can see this one has a pin, this one does not. I don't know what to do about that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So the links are the same except for that pin. I don't know. I'll have to do some more digging. I'll have to check on the Facebook groups and see what the deal is with that. Don't know. Don't know. Anyways, next is the your float needles on here. This is a round slide carb. It's not a CV carb, so you don't have that diaphragm associated with it at all. The the round or the CV carb deals with air pressure, vacuum, to open and close the slide, which is in there. But this one is direct, so the slide, if we can see that, is directly connected to the throttle cables. But there's your needle down here, way down in there, and you've got to, if you want to change your, I think it'll change the richness. I'll show you here in a second. You take the screw out of this arm, like so. Long screw with a lock washer on it. And what you got to do is, underneath here, put your finger in there and hold the slide up. There's two screws at the bottom of this arm you got to take out. This is where your magnetizer will come in handy. Get these screws up. I don't know if we'll be able to see the screws in there. Maybe. It's kind of hard to get in there. Anyways, we'll take these screws out. And I'll show you what we're dealing with here. This has fairly long screws on it. There's one itty bitty 4mm screw, I believe, with a lock washer, possibly a 3mm. Take the other one out. Sorry if my lighting's bad here. My normal camera's on the fritz, so I'm having to improvise until I get a new camera. Come on, baby. Get out of there. My magnetic screwdriver. There we go. Okay, now we can take the slide out. This arm just simply pulls up and out of the way. It's got a little plunger on here. And you can pull your slide out. The slide has a key in it. It'll only go one way. There's a little pin down inside that bore to for that keyway there to attach to. And here's your needle. This is if you want to change your needle settings. This one, the stock needle, it just basically has one setting on it, one little place for the clip to go. And the kit, if we could see here, I don't know if we can, this one has several grooves for a clip, so you can change that out, change it up, whatever. Put that needle aside. Now inside here also is a little itty bitty washer with a tang on it. See if we can't get that out. Come on, there it is. Not quite sure what this does, but you see it's got that little tang on it. Can we see that? So it just keeps the, I don't know what it does. It's just there. But don't lose that. I'm sure that would be important. I would think if you wanted to, you could with the needle, instead of changing the clip on the stock needle, you could simply put a washer on there. I think that's like what do they call it, like a 22-cent mod, whatever. And that would pull that needle up a little bit. But this little washer here has that little tang. There's a hole in your slide that corresponds to. That, for whatever reason, they don't want that washer to spin. I don't know why. Who cares? I guess. I don't know. But I'm going to put this needle back in. There we go. Keep that all together. We'll figure that out later. Okay, let's move on to one more important thing on this carburetor that you might want to remove. Maybe. I don't know. But I'll show you that in a sec here. Okay, to be honest, it's been a couple weeks here since I had to lay this down. I had something come up, but one of the last things I want to cover is this right here. This is an accelerator pump, and what this does is when you're at, I don't know, 3/4 full throttle or whatever, it pumps a little bit of extra gas. There's a little baffle in here, a diaphragm. I'll show you through this pipe here, and then there's a little itty bitty hole down there. It injects, I think, a little more gas, a little more air. I'm not sure. It comes through this passage right here. I'm not sure if that's gas or what, or air, or just more pressure. I'm not sure. Not that up to date. Anyways, if you have, I think, if you have trouble when you're like going to full throttle and it's bogging, this could be your problem, I think. So I'm going to take this apart and I'll show you. There's a spring under here, just like the CV carb has a spring underneath that diaphragm. So we will take these screws off here. This is available through ProCycle, or you can buy OEM. It's about 32 bucks for the whole diaphragm kit. But I would imagine they last quite a while. So hold on to that. You can already feel it pushing. And there's a spring under there, like I said. Get that out. And here's the baffle. Now, just like on your CV carbs, if that baffle is torn or whatever, that'll cause you issues. It is directional. It does have this little tab on here. There's a corresponding place to put that right here. You can see that right there. So it fits something like that. I did find this. The kit comes with, you got to take the screw out. There's a little plunger in here, and like I said, I'm not sure how it works, but I'm just kind of showing you how it all goes back together. What I did find too, because I've assembled this and reassembled it many times, you see there's a puck on each side, and I'm going, as far as direction, I'm going by the wear mark. If we could see that, there's a little, I think, like corresponding dot there from this little plunger, and the spring will go here. So you kind of fold it up like an umbrella, sort of, just to begin with, put it in place. It gets a little tricky for sure. Put that in place, mash that down. Hopefully that diaphragm did not move at all. I don't know. We'll just get one screw started. I assume too, cause you problems if this hose is compromised. You see how that spring is being difficult. I'd imagine it'd be pretty easy, because this is kind of hard to put together. It'd be pretty easy to damage that. So I'm just going to lightly cinch these down, because I don't know if I did that right. Could just take this hose off. That'd make things a lot easier. Come on, baby. Come. I'm going to replace this anyways. There we go. Let's just take that off. There it is. So one more thing to cover. And that is the engine side boot. And mine was really tough and hard. I should have replaced it, but anyways, let's cover that. Okay. Yep. Also, another possible problem with this carburetor is on the Chinese carb, I noticed there's a ball bearing right there. We see that? See that ball bearing? This one don't got one. I don't know how important that is. No idea. Not a clue. Might have to replace that. I looked on the schematic. Did not see a replaceable ball bearing, so I might have to source one out that'll fit in there. It's a press fit. There must be a spring under there, possibly. It doesn't seem to move at all, this one anyways, so I don't know. I really don't know what to do about that. Not sure. I'll have to look in my, I don't know. I'm not sure. Don't know. Anyways, there's a complete teardown of the TW200 carburetor except for the seat. And I'll have to throw this into my new ultrasonic cleaner, get this all cleaned up. It was a lot dirtier before, but I did put it in some carb cleaner, so Berryman's carb cleaner, so we'll see. But hope that was helpful. Next video I think I'm just going to install this into my 95, because my 94 is for my wife. It's in boxes, so I think I will just install this and try and get this running, because I want to ride my TW, you know. I want to get it out on the trails and stuff, and I can't do it. So anyways, hope that was helpful. Hope that was informative. If you have any questions or comments to help me out with this thing, I'd greatly appreciate it. That'd be great. All right. Oh, one last thing I want to discuss. If you're having other things, you're having starting issues. One thing is your intake carb boot. That could be cracked. That can cause issues. But another thing is on your engine side. This is the boot that goes on the engine side. There is a O-ring right here, which cost about $13. I tried to source it elsewhere, could not. So this is your only seal between this boot and your engine. That's it, that O-ring. So if this O-ring is flat or cracked or whatever, it can allow more air in and cause lean issues, running hot, maybe you know, popping and sputtering. So good thing to check is pull this boot off. It only has just two 5mm bolts, socket head Allen screws go in there. Pull that off, just check it. It's obviously an item that needs to be checked out, but there is that. So I think that covers it, except for one last thing. This Chinese carb, the float bowl drain screw, was boogered up even before I got into it. So I'm like, dang it. What do you do? So I might have to just get another Chinese carb and start all over. I don't know. If you got any suggestions, tips, hints, whatever, I'd appreciate it. Okay? Thanks. Frostbite out. Adios.